April 14th, 1912, 11:40 p.m. You're asleep in your cabin somewhere on the largest, most luxurious ship ever built, the RMS Titanic. Around you, 2,224 people are eating, sleeping, laughing, dancing. None of them know what's about to happen. In approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes, this unsinkable ship, will be at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean. 1,500 people will be dead. The question tonight is simple. Are you one of them? Over the next 45 minutes, we are going to walk you through exactly what happened on that ship, minute by minute. And as we go, you are going to make choices, the same choices real passengers had to make. Your survival depends on who you are, where you're sleeping, and what you decide to do in the next 2 hours and 40 minutes. Let's find out if you make it out alive. You paid the equivalent of $100,000 in today's money for your ticket. Your cabin is on the upper decks, B or C deck. It is, frankly, more beautiful than most homes in America. You have a private promenade, a fireplace, a 4-poster bed. You dine on oysters, roast duckling, and Waldorf pudding. The wine is imported. The silverware is real. Tonight you probably attended the first-class smoking room, sipping brandy with a retired colonel and a countess. You are also, statistically speaking, in the best possible position to survive what's about to happen. But only if you make the right choices. Your ticket cost around $600 in today's money. You're a teacher, maybe, or a vicar, a traveling businessman. Your cabin on D or E deck would have been considered first class on almost any other ship in the world. You eat well. You sleep in a proper bed with fresh linen. You've spent the evening in the second-class library, reading, playing cards. You feel lucky, and in some ways you are. Second-class passengers survive at a higher rate than third class, but not by as much as you might hope. Your ticket cost around $150 in today's money. You're likely an immigrant, Irish, Scandinavian, Eastern European, crossing the Atlantic in search of a new life in America. You share a cabin with strangers on F or G deck, deep in the belly of the ship. Some of you are in open berths with dozens of other passengers. Your corridors are a maze. You've barely been to the upper decks. I'll be honest with you, your odds are not good. About 75% of third-class passengers will not survive tonight. But some of them do, and we're gonna find out how. 11:39 p.m. Lookout Frederick Fleet is in the crow's nest, 29 meters above the waterline. There is no moon tonight. The sea is impossibly calm, so calm it's actually dangerous, because there are no waves breaking against the base of any icebergs. And then he sees it, a dark mass, dead ahead. He rings the bell 3 times, picks up the telephone. Iceberg right ahead. First Officer Murdoch gives the order, hard a starboard. Full stop, then fatally full reverse. It's not enough. To most passengers, it barely feels like anything. A slight shudder. A sound like tearing paper or distant thunder. Some people sleep right through it. But below the waterline, in the mailroom, in the boiler rooms, the damage is catastrophic. 5 of the 16 watertight compartments are breached. The ship was designed to survive 4. Here's your first decision. You felt the shudder. You're awake. A steward knocks on your door and tells you to put on your life belt and proceed to the boat deck. He seems calm. It's probably nothing. Do you go immediately, dressed in whatever you're wearing? Or do you take the time to dress properly? Layers, warm coat, your valuables before heading up? You get dressed. Fully. Warm layers. This is the correct decision, and here's why. The water temperature tonight is -2 degrees Celsius. Barely above freezing. If you end up in the water, or even on a lifeboat in the open North Atlantic air, hypothermia will kill you faster than drowning. Passengers who made it to lifeboats in their night clothes suffered terribly. Several died of exposure before rescue arrived. Some passengers who went to the boat deck immediately, in a hurry, weren't even let onto lifeboats because the officers didn't believe the situation was serious yet. They went back below, and then the stairways began to flood. Take the coat, take the layers, move deliberately, not in panic. Here is something that should make your blood run cold. The Titanic carried 20 lifeboats. Total capacity, 1,178 people. There are 2,224 people on board. Even if every lifeboat was filled to absolute maximum capacity, which they were not, more than 1,000 people would have no seat. But here's what makes it even worse. The lifeboats were not filled to capacity. Not even close. Lifeboat number 1 was launched with only 12 people in it. Could hold 40. It contained, among others, Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon and his wife, first-class passengers who later faced accusations of bribing crewmen not to row back for survivors. Lifeboat 7, the very first launched, left with 28 people aboard. Capacity, 65. The reasons were confusion, poor communication, and denial. Nobody, not even the officers, truly believed the ship was sinking until it was too late to fill boats properly. You are on the boat deck. It's now 12:30 a.m. The ship has been sinking for nearly an hour, though most passengers still don't realize how serious it is. There are several lifeboats being loaded. Here's the situation. You're a man. Officers are loading women and children first. An officer is shouting. The crowd around the boats is growing. You see Lifeboat 13 being prepared on the starboard side. There's room. An officer has his back turned. Do you rush for the boat, or do you wait? Risk your life and hope another boat it becomes available. This decision split families forever. Isidore Strauss, co-owner of Macy's, 67 years old, refused to enter a lifeboat before other men. His wife, Ida, refused to leave without him. They were last seen sitting together on deck chairs, holding hands. J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line, the company that owned the Titanic, stepped into a lifeboat. He survived. He never recovered from the public shame. The survival rate for men in first class was around 33%. For men in third class, it was under 17%. If you're a man in steerage and you wait politely for instructions, you likely don't make it. The locked gates, the language barriers, the sheer distance from the boat deck, all of it works against you. The men who survived from third class were almost universally the ones who didn't wait, who found routes the crew didn't know about, who climbed crane rigging or found gates that hadn't been locked yet. You might think being a woman meant automatic survival. Didn't. The survival rate for first-class women was 97%. For second-class women, 84%. For third-class women, 46%. Class killed people on the Titanic just as surely as the Iceberg did. Third-class women were often told to wait below for instructions that came late or not at all. By the time many were allowed up, the last lifeboats were gone. 2:17 a.m., the lights go out. The band has been playing on the boat deck for over 2 hours. Ragtime, hymns, waltzes. They play until the very end. All 8 musicians will die tonight. The stern is now rising out of the water. The angle is steep 20, then 30 degrees. Everything that isn't bolted down is sliding, crashing, screaming down the length of the ship. At 2:17 a.m., the lights flicker, then go dark entirely. The ship breaks in two, not slowly, violently, with a sound that survivors would describe for the rest of their lives. A roar, a crack, like nothing they had ever heard. The bow plunges. The stern rises vertical, hangs there, then follows. 2:20 a.m. The Titanic is gone. Into the sea go approximately 1,500 people. The water is -2 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, cold shock causes an involuntary gasp reflex. If your head is underwater, you inhale water. You have 30 to 90 seconds before you lose voluntary muscle control. Most people in the water are dead within 15 to 30 minutes. Survivor Harold Bride described the noise from the water as a continuous wailing chorus. Within 20 minutes, it faded almost completely. You are in Lifeboat 14. There are 40 people in the boat. The screaming in the water is all around you. You have room for maybe 10 more people, perhaps slightly more at risk of swamping. Fifth Officer Lowe, who is commanding your boat, eventually does go back. He waits 45 minutes and rescues 4 people still alive. Most were already dead. Only one officer turned back that night. Boat after boat sat and listened and did not return. This isn't a survival challenge. This is a moral one, and it's the one that haunted survivors for the rest of their lives. The RMS Carpathia received the Titanic's distress call at 12:20 a.m. She was 58 miles away. Her captain, Arthur Rostron, ordered everything possible done. Steamed full speed ahead, posted extra lookouts, had his crew prepare for rescue. She arrived at 4:10 a.m. The Titanic had been gone for nearly 2 hours. By the time she finished pulling survivors from the lifeboats, she had rescued 710 people. 710 out of 2,224. You've made it to a lifeboat. The ship is gone. It's 3 a.m. The temperature of the air is -4 degrees Celsius. Your lifeboat has no food, no fresh water, no engine, and very little warm clothing among you. Rescue could come in an hour, or it could be 5 hours. You don't know. Someone in the boat is hypothermic and won't stop moving, rocking the boat, pulling at the sides. They are putting everyone at risk. What do you do? They talked. They kept each other conscious. They organized people to row to generate heat. They stripped clothing from the unconscious and gave it to those still fighting. One group lashed several boats together and kept singing to stay awake. The ones who survived in the water itself, and a handful did, were the ones who stayed still, conserved body heat, and found something to float on. Second Officer Lightoller spent time in the water clinging to an overturned collapsible, organizing 30 survivors to balance the hull with their collective weight. He kept them alive through discipline and sheer will. Let's add it all up. Could you have survived the Titanic? If you were a first-class woman, 97% survival rate. You almost certainly make it if you get to the boats. If you were a first-class man, 33% survival rate. Your wealth gives you information and proximity to the boats. But the code of the sea works against you unless you choose to ignore it. If you were a second-class woman, 84%. Strong odds, but you had to act early and decisively. If you were a second-class man, 8%. Almost no one in your group survived. If you were a third-class woman, 46%. Just under half. Your biggest enemy was the labyrinthine layout of the ship and the slow communication of information to steerage. If you were a third-class man, 16%. The survivors were almost exclusively those who found their own way up, fast, without waiting for direction. It was not wealth alone, though wealth helped enormously. It was information, knowing what was happening before anyone else did. It was proximity, being close to the boats, close to the action, close to the exits. It was decisiveness, the passengers who hesitated, who waited for official word, who went back for luggage, who didn't want to seem panicked, they missed the windows. And it was unfairly luck. The lifeboat assignments were chaos. Some full boats launched with empty seats. Some people who did everything right still ended up in the water. The last living survivor of the Titanic was Milvina Dean. She was 2 months old when the ship sank. She survived in the arms of her mother. Her father died. She lived to be 97 years old. She died in 2009. She never had any memory of the Titanic, and yet she carried it with her for the rest of her life. So, could you survive the Titanic? Maybe, if you were in the right class, in the right place, with the right information, and you moved fast enough and made the brutal calls when they mattered. But here's the thing. Most of the people on that ship were good people, doing reasonable things, making sensible decisions, and they died anyway. The Titanic didn't just kill people. It exposed a system, a world where your ticket class determined not just your dinner but your life, where the women in steerage were left to figure it out themselves while first-class lifeboats launched half-empty. That's the real story of the Titanic. Not the iceberg, not the engineering failure, the lifeboat. T.S. So, could you have survived the Titanic? Maybe, if the stars aligned. The right class, the right deck, the right split-second decisions, and enough ruthless clarity when everything around you was falling apart. But the brutal truth is this. Most of the 2,224 souls aboard were decent, ordinary people making what seemed like reasonable choices in the moment, and they still went into the freezing black water. The iceberg didn't doom them. The half-empty lifeboats did. The locked gates did. The hesitation did. The system did. That's the real horror of the Titanic, and the reason this story still haunts us more than a century later. Now I want to know where you stand. Drop one word in the comments right now. Survived. If you think you would have made it out alive, gone down. If you're honest enough to admit the odds would have beaten you, be brutally honest. No judgment here. Thousands of people are going to read your answer. And if this 45-minute deep dive into one of history's most preventable disasters gripped you, hit that like button so the algorithm knows this kind of raw, no-filter history matters. Subscribe and turn on notifications because next we're tearing apart exactly what luxury really looked like on the Titanic and how fast that dream became a nightmare. The first-class video drops soon. You don't want to miss how the other half lived and died. See you in the next one. Stay curious and stay honest with yourself.